Welcome to the Astrology and the Numerology for April 17th, 2020. If you add all of those numbers up, you get the number 16. If you add the 1 and the 6 together, you get the number 7. The number 7 is the number of strategy. Pythagoras, who was the father of mathematics and numerology, considered the number 7 to be the super cool number of the numerological system. Because there are 7 chakras, there were 7 pillars on the side of the Parthenon. The number 7 is about mysticism and magic, but really about the tools, the sacred tool keepers that have studied subtle energy and have mapped subtle energy out to be able to explain patterns. So knowing in astrology that if Mars hits Venus, that's a bad thing, and what happens in the world when Mars hits Venus. So that's an example of how the number 7 is a strategizing number. So when you get the number 7 day, it's a day where we're supposed to kind of really look at our strategies and look at the patterns that we've been doing and decide whether those strategies have actually been working for us or they've not been working for us. And, I believe that all things come in time as they're supposed to. And I know that we often want things that do not come to us in the time requested or in the manner requested. Then from a childish place, we try to play manipulation games with the divine. We cajole, we whine, we pray, we demand, we try to say if the divine gives us this, we promise to do that. But through it all, I have learned that things come when they're supposed to, and not when we want them to. And I wish that were not so, but it proves itself out again and again. The divine has a plan, and that plan is not to just give us what we want when we want it. We are here to learn how to work within the realms of duality. I wish we did not learn from powerful resistance, but not getting what we want forces our mind to think outside of the box and reach into that reservoir of inner strength and power to either understand or to manifest something that is more aligned with our true self. So today, look at the strategy, look at the plan, is the plan working? I say this just because I hear a lot of people saying right now that they're looking at the patterns that are in their life and they're saying, I don't like this pattern. I don't like my work schedule. I don't even like my job. I don't like how my conversations are going in my relationships. How do I create a new pattern? How do I create a new strategy or a new structure? Well, the first thing is to recognize that the first person that has to change is you. And to say, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else, even if it fails. And so try out some new strategies. I love to start the conversation in a 7-day by saying, I want to have a conversation with you, but I don't know how to have this conversation with you without triggering you. So I want to be very conscious as we do this because I don't want to trigger you, and I'm actually trying to have a really deep, intimate conversation with you. So maybe try that for today. Okay. Now, the astrology. Okay, today has Mercury playing nice with Venus, and this is a great combination if you want to have that deeper conversation for a relationship and to really look at what you want in your life. So I love that the astrology and the numerology aligns, and when it does that, it's like this big light bulb going off that says, you need to have that conversation. You need to sit down and figure out what it is you're trying to say. You may suddenly discover that your old rushing lifestyle now seems completely ridiculous. You may realize that you want a completely different life. And now, because you recognize that you have to have that, everything in your life is going to change. I always say 70% of changing a pattern is the awareness that you have outgrown the pattern or that you're completely miserable in the pattern. I remember the moment when I recognized that I had created through my ego this incredible world and this incredible, place of self-importance and doing a lot in classes and everything, helping the community and psychic fairs and all this kind of stuff. And then there was a moment when I realized that that I'd actually been doing it and creating it from my ego rather than creating it from my true authentic self. So there's a huge difference when you shift out of doing it to help you decide that you're okay or that you're worthy, and doing it instead because you are worthy and you are just trying to share your gift with people. And there's a big shift that'll happen there. And I think a lot of people are coming up against that shift. People are really feeling the imbalance, and it is clear that some greedy people are desperate to have it all, while others have nothing and are not valued as important. And workers are feeling like they do not want to feel subordinate to bosses who use and abuse them. They do not believe those superiors are really superior. Humanity wants an environment where respect and honor take precedence over making money. And it is clear that on a global level, something has and will continue to shift. And just that makes me breathe a sigh of relief. You have no idea. There is so much still to do, and many bad things will still happen. I'm not going to lie to you. But in this moment, I don't even really care, because I can see and feel psychically this shift that has needed to happen finally begin. And there's something about that that allows me to relax and drop in. Now, the moon goes into Pisces in the afternoon, and it triggers our intuition and deeper longing, which is always a good thing. A longing that is old and ancient, a longing that makes us realize how much we are going to have to change. And without that longing, which allows for us to have choice in the matter, those changes will be forced upon us. I personally prefer to walk through a doorway with my own two legs and choice, rather than to be dragged painfully kicking and screaming through that same door. And I have been dragged through many doors, and I have learned that surrender to the universe is a much better idea than resistance. The old world is clearly dead, and now it is up to us to create something new. And the world needs a very strong vision from us to help manifest something that is of value to the whole world. This moment in time, we are finally past the petty needs of our personal self. It is clear that all choices now have to be thought through in a much bigger way. Your intuition is hitting the head of your ego and mind with a great big cosmic 2x4 club. I am sure you are feeling it. The strength of that intuitive self is going to become loud, so loud that you will not be able to ignore it any longer. And while that might feel as if you are losing it in some way and going a bit crazy, the reality is that it is your ego that is losing the control, and that makes the ego crazy. So surrender into that intuitive flow and allow it to open up the doors that you are not expecting, and let it lead you to a new and better life where you can be happier and much more content. Okay, so my quote for the day: some storms come to block your way, intentionally throwing obstacles in your path. They force you to go in another direction, and that is because the path that you thought you were on would lead you nowhere. And while your mind could not let go of what you believed you were seeking, the universe had another plan. These storms were created to get you back on track. These storms were never intended to lead you the wrong way. Okay, so since everybody's like the Peru stories, and, we're sitting here, caught in our little house doing the appropriate thing to be doing right now, we can dream about spiritual adventures. And so I will share one of my spiritual adventures again. One year, my sister decided to come with me to Peru, and I have an interesting relationship with my sister that has a particular anomaly. And it seems that when we get together, strange situations happen, and we confront death in some way. As in most cases, that way is that I almost die. Yes, that sounds a bit strange. But when she and I get together, it triggers something very karmic. And I don't know if it's because we're both fire signs, but there are always bizarre situations that will manifest. And this is one of those stories. we were in Machu Picchu, and I had been to Machu Picchu probably 10 times. And my sister wanted to take me somewhere that I had not been. And so I looked at the map, and one of the trails that I had not been on was the Temple of the Moon Trail. So off we went up the trail. And now I have to say right here that my sister and I have done a lot of hiking. And so I know how to have enough supplies, and I'm very well prepared. And I had 1.5 liters of water with gluconate in it, which is an electrolyte drink. And I had tuna and granola bars and chocolate. And so, we were set. I mean, this trail wasn't supposed to be, I thought, the most difficult trail of my life. But I had to remember that, the Inca Trail is an incredibly rough trail. And I had walked part of the Inca Trail from Ollantaytambo into Machu Picchu, and it almost killed me then. And so I don't know why I thought that I was going to have a different experience, probably because this was just a day trail rather than like a 3-day trail. So anyway, as we took the side trail to the Temple of the Moon, we quickly saw that this trail was taking us into the underworld. Now, what's so cool about Machu Picchu is that there's all this sacred geometry everywhere. Now, what I mean by that is that you turn and you look at something, and this rock looks like the landscape directly behind the rock. I mean, so literally the rock shape is exactly the same shape as the mountain behind it. And so when you turn over here, and this window is looking directly up a valley, and you go over here and you're looking out this temple, and it's amazing how oftentimes you see rainbows. And so there's all this weird sacred geometry. But what happened was that as we get on this trail, we're going on, so like here's Machu Picchu, and so we're going down this side, okay? And so most of the time you're up here, and so you don't see this side of the cliff face. But there were these natural stone outcroppings that, you would never see if you were standing on Machu Picchu, because they were underneath Machu Picchu, and they were actually the sides of the cliff, and those cliffs were supporting the structure of Machu Picchu and that old ruin. But now I could see even more of the sacred geometry, because in the mountain there were carvings of snakes and birds of prey. All dark omens telling us that we were going into the underworld of the Inca. And you get that bad feeling. You get that bad feeling like, maybe this wasn't the smartest move to do right here, okay? So these symbols were startling, and and without being on this trail, I would have never seen them. They were amazing. They were incredible, because they're just natural rock outcroppings. They're not carved by the Inca. They're just naturally there. And we noticed that the trail was being worked on, and that there were places where the workmen had barrels of rainwater for them to drink. And the trail was treacherous at some places, as there were no handholds and 300-foot drop-offs. It was intense. And so as we continued the trail, it decided to go down, and I mean down, 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 down. So the steps were steep, and in many places the carved step was as high from the bottom of my foot to my knee. And I realized that we had seen no one on this trail. And suddenly it was very clear why. This was an incredibly difficult trail. And it was in that moment that I said to my sister that perhaps we should go back, as we were really not prepared for this type of terrain. And she, as my adventurous Sagittarian sister always is, wanted to continue. And this is, I think, part of why I get in trouble with her, because she's like, no, let's go ahead. This will be really cool. And all my spidey sense is going, I don't think this is good. And, I should start listening to my spidey sense. But I'm having an adventure with my sister. And so I wanted to keep going. So by the time we get down to the temple, we completely recognized that we were going to have an agonizing climb up and out. Now, this temple was beautiful. I mean, honestly, it was some of the most amazing stonework I had seen in Machu Picchu, but it was also protected, again, by some entity. Now, that entity did not feel angry or threatening or evil, but it did feel protective. And I could tell that, this was a very special temple, because as you walk into this temple, there are these niches. And there are these incredible stones in these niches that are gigantic. And you know by looking at the stone that they're not from here. They're not from this area at all. And so you realize that somebody had to drag these stones in. And I mean, we're talking stones that are like 3,000 pounds. I mean, it's not like you could move this stone at all. And I'm thinking, the Inca were tiny people, and the people at Machu Picchu were picked because they were the smallest. And you couldn't put a stone like this on the back of a llama. It would break a back of a llama. So I didn't know how they got these things in here. And I swear that the Inca people were some of the strongest, sturdiest people probably on the planet at the time. So anyway, so we went into this temple. It was beautiful, but on the wall was the biggest bug I have ever seen. I mean, literally this bug was from here to here. That's how big it was. And it was shocking. And I realized that it was just like quietly staring there. And I spoke to it as if it was a manifestation of the guardian of the temple. And I honored it. And I said that we were not going to harm the temple in any way. And then we went out of the temple and went into the cave temple and sat and drank some water and ate our tuna, including our tuna juice in the can, because at this point we realized we probably didn't have enough water. And, we did not realize until later that we were sitting in this place in the Temple of the Moon where they mummify the bodies and drain the fluid out of them for mummification. So the whole time we were sitting on a platform where they did the mummification. Finally, we decided to leave. And within 10 minutes of leaving, we realized how hard our trek was going to be to get out of this place. Every step was so hard that every few steps I had to stop. And while I wanted to sit down, I heard a guide say in my head very clearly, if you sit down, you won't make it out of here. You have to keep going. So I kept going. My sister is a doctor, and she realized that we were going into heat stroke. Nothing like a sister deciding to tell you, oh, by the way, Suzanne, do you realize that you have all the symptoms of heat stroke? And she became concerned and then alarmed when I got diarrhea. That is because having diarrhea is a sign that your body and mind believes that you have been poisoned and thinks that you need to dump everything in your guts. But to do that, you leach more water out of your system. And I had to think of the mummification table again. What are they doing? But they're leaching the water out of everybody's guts, right? Oh. So after that, I knew I was in trouble because having the diarrhea was a really bad sign, and I was already dehydrated, and then I had diarrhea, and then I was more dehydrated. And we were out of water, and I was weaving on the trail with 300-foot drop-offs, and I was stumbling, and I was fuzzy in my brain, and my eyes stopped taking in the entire area, and all I could see in front of me was the trail in front of me, and my mind just focused on taking one step at a time and not stopping. And my goal was to get to those barrels of water that we had seen at the beginning. Now, I had no intention of drinking that water because it was full of mosquito larvae, but I knew that I could sit in the barrel and cool off my core body temperature. And I felt as if I was cooking from the inside out. My clothes were literally falling off of me because my body was leaching water out of my blood in order to cool myself off. And so my heartbeats were getting harder and heavier. And I could feel that my blood was thick and sticky and it wasn't transporting oxygen well. So I took off all my clothes to cool off. Yes, I was down to my skivvies, and I did not care. I was so hot that I had to do anything possible to cool off. I figured that if someone saw me on that trail, that I would just sort of make their day. So they would have that story to tell. I went on this trail to the, Temple of the Moon, and there was this naked woman walking on the trail. But I thought, what the hell? So finally, we get to one of the barrels of water, and I literally dove headfirst into the water. And I took off my boots and my socks, and then I jumped fully into the barrel of water to blissfully cool off. And my sister was laughing so hard, but I was so happy because I can feel my core temperature cooling off and my stress level dropping. And I am then able to put clothes back on, and I tell her that she is welcome to jump in, but she refuses and says that I was in worse shape than her. Famous last words. As we continue out, suddenly she breaks down. And she is suddenly almost running, like beelining her way out of there. And when I ask her to slow down, she says, I can't. That she is running on reserves, and if she stops, she will not be able to start again. And I totally understood, because that's how I felt, how I had been feeling before the barrel of rainwater. And we make it out of there, and we see a family on the main trail coming down, but all their water bottles are empty. So we can see that, we can see them empty in their hands. And so it felt pointless to ask them for water. That seemed weird and rude. And so we make it to the place where they were selling water at Machu Picchu, and my clients are all coming up to me, and they're all happy, and they want to share in their day. And I'm like, stop. My sister and I almost died from dehydration on the trail, and we need water and Coca-Cola as fast as you can get them for us. And they kindly went over and got us what we needed. And I drank 2 liters of water and 4 Coca-Colas, and my sister about the same. And when we got back to the hotel, I drank 4 liters of water and more Coca-Colas again. And it still took me 10 hours to pee. And my sister said that, I had such severe heat stroke that technically I was in renal failure, and that I should have been hospitalized, but we weren't anywhere near there was a hospital. And I was literally a wreck for 3 days. I literally couldn't really do anything with the group for 3 days because I could barely function. I could barely get out of bed. So the joke from my clients after that was, yeah, go to Peru with Suzanne and have a death experience. So there you go. Now, I will say that I have had a lot of close calls in my life. Probably some of them you'll hear on these YouTube videos, but that one was amazingly close. I mean, like when you get back and you can't pee for 10 hours and you're drinking liters and liters of water, and then you literally can't function for 3 days afterwards. I should have probably been hospitalized, but I'm just too stubborn of a Leo. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you guys have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.